Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes, and we are just over 2 weeks from the election, or the end of the election, or the end of the voting, may not be the end of the election. And the situation with the virus is just very bad and getting worse. There's no other way to say it. Cases are spiking, with new daily cases averaging more than 57,000 per day. That is not far from where we were at the height of the pandemic this summer, at least in terms of tested cases. Here's the even more worrying thing. Hospitalizations, that key metric that doesn't depend on how much testing we are. We know how many people are in hospitals. That is trending up as well. It keeps climbing. You can see it on the chart there. 38,000 now currently hospitalized. Hospitals in some areas now at or near capacity. And even with advances in treatment, we are still losing more than 700 Americans on average every single day to this virus, day after day after day. Yet the president is astonishingly, and perhaps not surprisingly, but maddeningly, basically back to where he was in late February, when he was telling the public not to worry, and that infamously the cases would go down to zero, despite getting dire warnings from public health officials. The president's re-election message 2 weeks out is essentially, forget about it. Don't worry about the pandemic. It's old news. Quote, people are tired of COVID. People are saying, whatever, just leave us alone. People are tired of hearing Fauci and all these idiots. All these idiots. Whew. That was the president today talking about the nation's top public health experts, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, the most trusted messenger in the country on how best to handle the virus. Trump today described Fauci as a, quote, disaster, and then spent the day petulantly picking on him on Twitter. He's plainly pretty jealous of the fact that people like Fauci. And they trust him. And Fauci's on TV a lot, and that's the most important thing in the world to Donald Trump. 64% of registered voters describe Fauci's coronavirus response as good or excellent. That's a big number in these polarized times, and only 39% say the same of Donald Trump. People, rightfully, the majority of people, do not trust what the president says and does when it comes to the virus, obviously for obvious reasons. And at a certain level, Donald Trump is right. People are tired of hearing about the virus and being told they can't do the things they want to do. We're all tired of it. I'm tired of saying it to you. We all want this to be over. But people are also tired of seeing their friends and family suffer and not being able to go to weddings or funerals, and they're tired of worrying about getting sick and really, really tired of watching people they love die alone, FaceTiming with their loved ones in their last moments, while the president pretends that nothing is wrong. We're tired of that. Some of Trump's worst approval ratings, you might remember, came this summer when the virus was at its midsummer peak. And he's down nationally right now to Joe Biden by 10 points or so as the pandemic gets worse. At a rally yesterday in Nevada, Trump actually attacked Joe Biden for saying that he will listen to the scientists if he becomes president.
He'll listen to the scientists. If I listened totally to the scientists, we would right now have a country that would be in a massive depression. Instead of, we're like a rocket ship. Take a look at the numbers.
A rocket ship. First president ever to lose more jobs, to net lose jobs. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci has been very restrained. He's walked this incredible tightrope. We've all watched him do it. It's stressful to even see him be interviewed. And when confronted with comments like that, today, Fauci offered a not so subtle response.
We have a lot of challenges ahead of us, and I can't help thinking that we're really, going through a time that's disturbingly anti-science in certain segments of our society. That's very troublesome to me.
It's very clear that the nation's COVID response is not being run by people like Anthony Fauci. It is being run by, well, this guy, Dr. Scott Atlas. We've met him before on this program. Just to be clear, he's not an epidemiologist or a virologist or an infectious disease specialist or someone who works in public health. He's a radiologist. I mean, which, again, you got to go to a lot of school for that. It's expertise. But that's the guy that looks at your MRI, all right? And he has the president's attention and got it by just going on Trump TV and telling the president what the president wants to hear, despite not being qualified to discuss what he's discussing. He is basically a right-wing hack with a medical degree. And he has effectively argued that we should just pretend there isn't a pandemic and expose most of the U.S. population of the virus, other than the most vulnerable. It's always clear to say that, so we can get it over with, even though most legitimate experts say that would mean hundreds of thousands of excess deaths. Scott Atlas is a guy who just this weekend tweeted that masks don't work, which prompted Twitter to remove his tweet for spreading misinformation. That's who Trump is listening to. more than any other scientist, if you want to call a radiologist a scientist. That guy. There's a great new piece in the Washington Post about how Scott Atlas is just wreaking havoc inside the coronavirus task force. He's clashing with other scientists, slowing testing, and advocating fringe theories. I'm going to talk to one of the reporters who wrote that piece in just a moment. But I just want to point out first that Scott Atlas is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, which, when you take a second to think about it, kind of tells you all you need to know. The Hoover Institution is a conservative think tank funded by rich right-wingers, housed at Stanford. And those rich right-wingers got together and said to themselves, you know whose reputation we need to resuscitate? The worst American president of the last 100 years, Republican Herbert Hoover, who is rightly associated with the most catastrophic failure to handle a crisis in the entire 20th century, that being the Great Depression. Though, to be fair to Herbert Hoover, he was actually a pretty competent guy, fascinating bio. He'd done great things in his life before his disastrous presidency, which is a point of contrast with our current president. But the Great Depression is a pretty darn good precedent for what we are experiencing right now. As a nation, we haven't really faced a catastrophe here in this country this terrible that's been bungled this badly by a president since Hoover. By the way, back in February, when Trump was painting a rosy picture about the virus, get this, the Trump administration gave a private briefing on the virus that fueled a market sell-off, and that briefing was to none other than the Hoover Institution. Herbert Hoover's disastrous stewardship of this country during the Great Depression did not result in a groundswell of support. Hoover famously lost his re-election race in 1932 to FDR by more than 17 points. It was a landslide. I don't think a 17-point differential is really possible anymore, and Lord knows what will happen in the next 2 weeks. Lord knows if the polls are right. But right now, it looks like Donald Trump, like Hoover before him, is driving both the country and his electoral chances off a cliff.